me and the free market here on the David Tulis Show. I love my job, and I think I'm going to complain to management that I don't have enough time with 2 hours a day. That's just simply not enough time to get to everything that we need to cover. And by way of advice that I can give to you, because that's kind of how I view the David Tulis Show, as a way of advising you, my listener, the man who matters, right? And I think if you're a woman, you used to not be able to listen to this show, but now I've given general permission that everybody can listen to this program, and it is a unisex, egalitarian show now. And I do want you to know that I'm pro-government. I'm very pro-government, and probably more so than anybody pro-government radio. That's David Tulis, 92.7 FM and 95.3 over on the high def digital side, HD 4, 95.3 HD 4. I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local, but that nostrum doesn't really address the problem that City Council is facing with complaints from business people, and the rising of the Phoenix, if you will, in the head of the police department, David Roddy, petitioning 2 weeks ago now and a day, 2 weeks ago and a day, petitioning City Council to consider the idea of an ordinance that would ban aggressive panhandling citywide. Right now, there is a special ordinance that adopts some of the language of state law, prohibiting aggressive encounters by beggars, by alms seekers in the touristy parts of Chattanooga. That would be the riverfront and Miller Park, Miller Plaza, and also the Bessie Smith Hall on Martin Luther King Boulevard. And so he proposed that. There was an uproar. The next Tuesday, which is the standard City Council meeting night, there were many. There were a couple. Well, I don't know how many, maybe 15 or so complainants about this measure, universal condemnation by everybody there. And then last night, Tuesday, more complaints about the idea, but there was a rebuttal, and that came from business people who you can read what they have to say at yournews.com. That's yournews.com. Go to the Chattanooga page or the local front page, and hear what they are saying and what they told the City Council. I got some to give me some quotes afterwards, and some are quoted in their brief speeches, their brief orations to the City Council. And the concern there is that if there's not a control on panhandling, that their businesses will suffer. People will not come back to G's Detroit sausages if there are beggars nearby who assault, disturb, perturb, and beg from people who go in there to eat and then come out with their pocket change and maybe some leftover that they're going to take home and have for a snack later that day in the office. And so here now they're besieged by one or two people, or maybe ragged looking, perhaps not smelling very well, who have a desperate tale that Chief Roddy advises everyone to discount. Chief Roddy says when a homeless person tells you a sad story, it's almost always that there's hardly any truth in it. The truth is hard to come by. I'm a church deacon, or have been in the past a church deacon, and we often heard stories that were so, and I would make note of them, and then I would ask follow-up questions. Stories that were simply made up, and you could tell that they were being made up because the details were, they didn't all hang together, and they just seemed somehow extreme. And so our policy at that Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church did not give direct cash aid, but we would always invite the person petitioning to have lunch with us, because we always have at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church lunch that the wives and some of the teens put together every Lord's Day after the main service, prior to the second, you might say, the evening service that was held about 2:15 or so every Lord's Day. And so these people were invited to stay and eat. And many really didn't want to do that. They just wanted the quick in and out. And so, and the stories that the deacons heard sometimes were clearly, or if not clearly suspicious. They weren't clearly made up, but they were somehow suspicious in their telling, especially when we could ask questions that followed up that suggested an inconsistency between part B and part L. Okay, not quite the same language anymore between the two parts. This is David Tulis, and I argue for near over far, small over big, and simple over complex. And in the footnotes at 5-point type, now this is Helvetica type, the neutral type, right? That doesn't take sides. It's not partisan. It doesn't take either side in the squabble. We argue that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. Brought to you by yournews.com, and also Nooganomics, of which I'm the editor and chief scribe at Nooganomics.com, covering the free market and laying out the means whereby our reconstruction might be made in Chattanooga, long term, thinking in terms of course, God's grace and heeding to God's commands. I think if we heed God's commands, we have a greater reservoir of equity. Equity is not simply ownership, but we do have that. But we have also in God's blessing, we have His favor and a staying of the hand of judgment, which we see already in many areas. Though Chattanooga, compared to cities such as Memphis, even Nashville, the hand of judgment is stayed from us. And those are clear blessings. We look at the arrival of visitors and aliens and strangers in Chattanooga. That's one. But on the other hand, we have less a deduction of human life, less murder of human life, especially among the unborn. In the last year for which data is available, 151 women, if I'm recalling correctly, who reside in Hamilton County destroyed their sons or daughters with the help of the abortion industry. They had to go elsewhere for this amazing deed of liquidating a black child. Blacks are predominant in the death notices, for which there is no name attached in the data kept by the Department of Health in Nashville. Now, the panhandling ordinance that comes is, as you might guess, comes not to my notice with great favor. It is attached with a narrative in 80 cases to read for concerns. Now, this is a selection of some 400 encounters that came to the police's attention. We have here a sample of 80. Even among these samples, there are encounters which I'll say are just simply innocuous. So the number of evil cases where there are evil encounters and threats made by a beggar are probably on a couple handful of the 400 plus that are mentioned as having occurred in a 3-year period. For example, here's one in the famous all capital letters of some police officers who simply think that they're being emphatic, and every word is capital. Every word in every letter is styled capital. Police observed the defendant standing on the side of the road. It's 4700 North Terrace with a sign begging for money. He was seen obstructing the road. Now, that no officer can see someone obstructing the road. Okay, that is a conclusion of law, that there's an obstruction. He has to say what he sees. So he's not really saying what he's seeing here. This is a report drawing conclusions. He's saying he stood at the edge of the road and cars had to put their brakes on, or cars had to veer slightly to the right to avoid him standing on the left. Now, that would be the fact, and that could be concluded to be an obstruction of the road. But anyway, he says it's an obstruction of the road to obtain money. Police issued the defendant a citation. All right. And then another one, the date is January 12, 2015, at approximately 07:56 hours, military time here. I responded to 101 Glenwood Drive on a report of an aggressive panhandler. Upon arrival, I was unable to locate any panhandlers, nothing further. Another one included same month and 4 days later, officers K Auto employee number so-and-so, and another officer, R. Lim, made contact with Joshua Walker, and it's found that he was soliciting passing motorists at the exit ramp on ML King and Highway 27. His information was run through NCIC, discovered he had an active warrant in Florida, so he was taken to the jail for extradition. And then that same, a few days later, in February the 1st, we encounter Angela Solomon. Officer Romeo responded to a panhandler at 410 Market Street. She was given a warning and advised that she had been banned from the property, sing it or wing it. And should she return, it could result in criminal trespass charges. She was then asked to return to her home for the evening. She complied and left the scene. No further action was taken. So you see, some of these are not, someone's been so annoying to the owner of wing it and sing it that, or sing it or wing it, that the owner said, look, you can't come back on my property. I'm warning you. You're a trespasser. Get off my property. And so she was back again. And now she has an encounter with an officer who says, well, you face a criminal trespass charge at my hand, as I'm a witness to this, and I've been informed of the claim against you by the owner. You go home. And so she does. And so many of these encounters are, let's just call them innocuous and harmless. They're not someone being threatened with bodily injury by a beggar with filthy plastic bags in one hand and an open palm in the other, and a dirty hat covering most of his face with the beard on the chin. Not that kind of encounter. And so we are advised that this by this bill that we need to have 9 pages of type. Just in a nutshell, the problem with 9 pages of type is this, that it's hard to obey. How do you know what to obey if you have that much type? How are these poor people gonna find out about this? How do you inform the subject of the ordinance, the person who is made liable to its provisions? How do you inform that person of the details? I mean, if it goes on for 9 pages, how many sentences is an officer going to have to memorize in which to inform his defendant, his future
tea
defendant?
Is just that, life-changing. Life-change tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses from intruders. What intruders are toxins in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's
This is David Tulis, and my left hand does not know what my right hand is doing, but I've gotten straightened out. I'm making friends between left hand and right hand, and I am back. I do want you to know that was just a short break, and we're going to have to get back into the gray type here in the ordinance. Now, the ordinance, just if you want to hear a little bit more about it, the ordinance, well, hold on a second. I was going to say, the problem with an ordinance like this is that it's got so many provisions. There's so many alleyways. One of them is not even paved. Okay. And how do these poor people know to what they are liable to perform or to cease perform? How do they know? Now, some of these, you could say, well, this is all just common sense, right? Common sense. Well, and yes, and if you approach someone rushing at them and you're intending to ask them for money and you rush up to that person might be fearful for his bodily integrity, right? Fearing to being assaulted. So that could be a charge right there, just in the statute by itself, because it's inequitable. It is unequitable and criminal by law in Title 39 of the code, the Tennessee Code, that you can't, that an assault is assault is the fear of being physically injured, and of course battery is when it actually happens. So assault and battery often go together, and so we have many things written out here. One point that the ordinance goes out of its way to show is in the whereases, is that we're not trying, the city council, if it passes, it would not be trying to limit free speech. It says in the very first one, for example, it says, whereas it is the intent of the council in enacting this ordinance to recognize free speech rights for all citizens, while at the same time protecting the
people online, but it's just going to do me.
The coexistence.
It's internet and
the
mega.
The coexistent rights for all citizens to enjoy safe and convenient travel in public places, free from intimidating contact or conduct, threats, and harassment that stem from certain types of abusive solicitation, or that may give rise to interference with others' activities if they occur in particular settings and contexts. So that is to say, we're going to weigh the rights of free speech on one hand with the coexistent rights of other people to be safe, to be able to conduct their transactions at ATMs, their purchases at restaurants, their walking from restaurant door to car, and so on, free from intimidation. And that is what the ordinance tries to do, is quantify what intimidation is. This is David Tulis, and the ordinance goes on to say that passive panhandling is okay. It says that there are numerous forms of solicitation that are not in and of themselves inherently threatening or aggressive, including vocal requests for a donation, carrying or displaying a sign requesting a donation, shaking or jingling a cup of change, and ringing a bell in compliance with any applicable noise ordinance. It is 800-8949 if you want to call me, 800-8949. This is David Tulis, and I'm
Oglesby, member of Chattanooga City Council.
Yeah, David, one thing I will say about this ordinance is it's starting a conversation on how we can better serve those populations of homelessness. Had we not moved forward with having discussions about this ordinance, we wouldn't be having these discussions that I believe is going to lead to more services, improved services, and other opportunities to help those citizens like the homeless in our community that needs so much assistance. And that's one thing that this bill I see is doing, and it's starting that conversation.
Mr. Oglesby, I believe, is one of the sponsors, and he is here saying that, sort of suggesting, looking philosophically beyond the immediate conflict of getting it passed, that it is creating a discussion, and that would be in this direction. If we don't need a panhandling ordinance because we have care for these people who they don't have to beg, they can have free meals and free lodgings and so on elsewhere. And many of the critics of the ordinance are proposing socialism. They want more socialism. They want more handouts, more taxpayer funded amenities for people who are not responsible enough to have property enough to lock behind a door, right? And who don't have fixed addresses, who don't have capital, who are not investing themselves in their place. They're often not working. They're not offering themselves for service, and they're just wanting a handout. Now here, and he's saying, Mr. Oglesby is saying that, well, this, if nothing else, this will give us a conversation on what those things should be. And the question, of course, for you, my listener, is, well, do we want a state solution? Do we want more state solutions for homelessness, or do we want private solutions? William Green, who runs G's hot dog shop on Martin Luther King Boulevard, says that, and you can read this at yournews.com, read my story about the city council meeting. Mr. Green says, well, people who are needy should think about themselves. They should not just ask, but ask what they can do. And in his comment to the council, he is pointing out that the solutions may be private. They may be not ones that are within the authority, not within the competence of the city council or the ordinances or the police, right? An ordinance wants the police to do something. Every bill, every law wants a cop or a tax collector to do something, right? To force something upon somebody. That's what every bill in Congress does. Every bill in the General Assembly does, almost without exception. And here, an ordinance that would empower someone to do something which otherwise would not be allowed, right? And that's why you have to pass laws. You have men getting married to men. That's not possible. You can't have a man marrying a man. It can only happen in the fiction of legislation, where we can make things happen. We can make things that are unlawful happen. We can ordain things to happen by virtue of our authority. And so what Mr. Oglesby is thinking of is that, at least if we don't solve these problems by having another welfare program for poor people, another dole, among many, then at least we've discussed that. Here he is again.
The proposal for panhandling to be the ban to be extended to all of the city.
Well, it's something that a lot of the constituents in other parts of our community has a great concern about. Originally, it was just downtown around the aquarium, so it's going to expand to where it's citywide.
The objections mostly have been, well, most of the comments we've heard in the chamber have been negative against it as ungodly, unchristian, and so on. How in your mind do you deny these allegations?
Well, it's not a question of denying it. It's just focuses on aggressive panhandling, and that's those people who are in people's face, following them around. They're literally harassing people for money. We understand that, there's a group of citizens that rely on public support, if you will, and they can continue to pretty much do what they need to do. We understand that, but the focus is on those individuals who are aggressively approaching citizens in our city for monies or food or whatever. I sympathize with them, but those citizens that are walking around our city deserve the right to do so without being harassed.
Thank you, Erskine Oglesby.
You're welcome, David. Yeah.
David Tulis here. We're hearing from Erskine Oglesby after the city council meeting last night. The ordinance that would ban aggressive panhandling has special areas. This is the alleyway I was mentioning a moment ago. There are special areas where that are called ones with heightened personal privacy concerns. That would be ATMs and locations within 20 feet of a sidewalk cafe during operating hours, unless the solicitor's presence is authorized by the owner. Others in which a reasonable person would have a reasonable and justified concern about whether congestion and close proximity to others would compromise his or her interest in privacy. So there is a sort of an unnamed area there that would be where one would have a concern for privacy. I'm not sure what that has in mind, but that is one of the provisions of a 9-page city council proposed ordinance pushed initially as a concept by Chief David Roddy and appearing before the city council after the meeting yesterday. In fact, as I heard, it came out just after the meeting was over. Copies were made available, and with a 22 or 21 or 22 page addendum citing about 80 police reports of about 400 that are said to have occurred, 400 encounters that are said to have occurred in a 3-year period from 2015, 16, and 17. What is the right thing to do? What are the market solutions? Well, there are market solutions, and I hope you'll call me as to suggest what they might be. How can Christianity have a say in these things? What does Christianity require? The left hand of the Christian church, the left wing, was there yesterday. What about the conservative? What about the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Church of Christ, the Baptists? What do they say? I think this is panhandling is a problem that is that arises from, well, a lack of hope among some, and lack of means, maybe lack of resources, a lack of extended hands offering gifts of coin or bills. Can this problem be solved by the police? I don't think it can be. This is David Tulis.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD.